Welcome into a second time. The second time we do this, a joint edition. Floyd Street's finest Sunday morning hangover. He's Phil Baker. I'm Jack Grossman on Floyd Street's finest podcast, Field of 68 Podcast Network, and also Sunday morning hangover on ESPN 680, 1057. I've gotten to say that in a minute. That was fun.
Look at you. It's like riding a bike for you, buddy.
Yeah,
How
I
are you
know.
doing?
I'm
Did you have a
doing
good
fantastic.
derby?
I did.
Good.
Did you have a good derby?
I did. It was good seeing you and Strebel and all your glory and Ennis and Biscuit and Chrissy out at the track on Thurby. You were shining like a king, a young stallion at the track. So it was nice to see a wildebeest in his natural habitat. Just a wild beast, just roaming the bowels of Churchill Downs. That was Jack Grossman on Thurby.
Man, it was a great time. I love
It
Thurby.
was a
That was the
great
first time I had done Thurby.
That's the first time
And
you've done Thurby?
yeah, that's the first time I've done it. Just
Wow.
because when I was growing up, it wasn't really big yet. And then when I was like in high school, I did the Oaks every year in high school, and then I transitioned into Derby as kids from Louisville do as you like graduate high school, move on to college. Did the infield for that for a few years, and then I was always back at the station producing, so I was never out there. The one year I would have gotten the chance to be out there was the year my brother graduated from college, so I didn't get to do any of that. But no, I'd always wanted to do Thurby, and it delivered, man. That was really fun.
Yeah, you got a nice day up until about 5 o'clock or so, but it was great. The city, man, it's like I wish the city in the PGA Championship last year too, and there's some other items. I wish that we could put that in a bottle and have that energy like throughout the year. And at times you get it, for football and basketball around there. But if a select Breeders' Cup comes in here, and then Louder Than Life in Bourbon, so I'm like listing off more and more things. It's like we have that, but I like having that energy around the city, and there's a pulse around there for sure. So no, it's definitely a cool sight. And it was great seeing you out there shining like a young star.
It was great seeing you too, man. Did you make it out there Derby Day?
I did not go Derby Day, so I've been fortunate over the time. I think I've told you in the past. My sister-in-law and tickets have fallen in our lap last second, but we were just kind of helping out, little babysitting with the niece and nephews, let them go out there with the kiddos, and it was a nasty-ish day. But look, Derby, like the broadcast NBC does, I think, and it's one of the best pieces of just television out there. Maybe that's just me being a sap, like being from Louisville, Kentucky, around that, but I think they do a great job. Or Mike Tirico got a nut allergy, which made me sad. But nonetheless, it was a great broadcast all around and really delivers on the hype, and the ratings indicated as much.
Yeah, I mean, highest rated Derby since 1989. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal. I also was not there. My brother did a big Derby party. There were probably about 40 people at his house. So we had a fun time.
Yeah, it's fun. You gotta I applaud the people that can do Derby year in and year out, but there's also some of for me at least, I gotta recharge the batteries, and like when I have like really nice experience, not to like double brag, but I've been very fortunate with things falling in our lap like right at the
Hey,
finish
Phil
line.
gets in, man.
Well, I mean, this time, look, the last time I went there, they were like legit tickets at the finish line. It's like I didn't move, so I was like, I got it made on this one. So I had to pinch myself sometimes, but I know that's not going to be a consistent thing year to year. I appreciate Double D and Darren Rogers. Speedy recovery too for Darren Rogers. I know he was battling some health stuff over there at Churchill, but the partnership we have, they do great work over there, and just an all in all, a wonderful time out at the track.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great weekend. Disappointed that Sovereignty. I know we're getting into Louisville basketball, I promise, but they got to change the Triple Crown format, right?
We had CL Brown on earlier.
He wrote a great
week.
column on it.
Yeah, no, and I alluded to you giving him some credit on that because I agree as much. But CL, Pat Forty, Bozich, all the heavy hitters were coming out for that. It's just, you got so much momentum going into the Preakness, and I know it's a little bit different than it was, 50 years ago, but it's also kind of like you gotta reassess some things. Like there's like you go back and watch NFL films, and like you can't go across the middle anymore, and some of the hits that were acceptable 40 years ago, 20 years ago aren't acceptable now. So the sports change, adapt. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. I would love to see it just because of the storylines there. But, on the heels of, well, I say heel, we're approaching a decade now with, American Pharaoh and Justified. So it's been really rewarding to kind of see it, at least in our lifetime. So I'm not going to get us up and outraged like I would prior to that. But nonetheless, it was a really cool moment for the local ownership. The Bill Mott going to Joe's Older Than Dirt, and then the Garland of Roses. This is so Louisville, making it to the freaking Bambi bar. Like I challenge Joe's Older Than Dirt and making the Gargle of Roses to the Bambi Bar. It doesn't get more Louisville than that.
It really is perfect, man. You can't make some of that stuff up. I love it. And I think it would be great for horse racing. Horse racing and college sports have very similar issues to
Right.
where it's all just everyone's broken off doing their own thing, whether it be the different tracks or the different conferences. There's no central governing body. Because of that, we have a lot of stuff that's just messed up in both entities, which is unfortunate being in Louisville where college sports is king and our biggest event of the year is the Kentucky Derby.
Well, and I
And
will say this though, like I mean, the not to interrupt, but the TikTok guy with the Sandman thing, which
yeah,
I don't know nothing about. That's probably more in the Ethan Grossman wheelhouse. And then also having the Netflix series, it feels like it's been a shot in the arm to the sport, like just from the casual fans
right. But you
that
got
aren't
to
watching.
capitalize on
Oh no,
that.
no, I'm completely agree
Yeah.
with you on that. But it feels like there's kind of got that F1 full golf, full swing momentum from the Netflix that can really kind of catapult, and then obviously sports gambling with that, which obviously we know everything around here with horse racing. But it's
Yeah,
just
we are
funny to
both
me.
unfortunately still working.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it was a bad day at the track and on Twin Spire, so it was not a good day. Like not a good day at all. Like to the point where it's like I was contemplating deleting the apps because it was but it's just funny because I think you're 100% right. You got to capitalize on that. I love some of the personality though from the Netflix show. Have you been able to watch
Yeah.
any of that? Okay, good. So I think like there's some very hateable characters. There's some very loud characters. There's some where it's like, oh man, you've seen them out and about and you didn't know their story. So no, I'm happy that it's getting some exposure and it sounds like that it's possibly going to return as well.
Can I just say, I think my dream in life is to just be Mike Rapoli.
Oh my God.
To
Well,
have
no, so
the life of owning horses and funding Rick Pitino's basketball team.
well, and not only
Like,
that, so you'll love
perfect.
this. So I think it was, oh my goodness, was it? Oh, it was a horse racing Benny, and I'm drawing a blank on who did it, but somebody put out there, maybe it was Lane Gold. I'm just going to say that because he's a part of ESPN's horse racing coverage. And he put out, it's like, who's living a better life right now? And then he mentioned everything you just did right there. And he said, and he's wearing Crocs in the winner's circle. And I was like, I love this guy. Like, he's loud, he's brash, he pisses people off, he rubs people the wrong way, but you need something like that in the sport, man. Like,
Yeah.
that's something who's loud and it is a personality, and you're not going to get an exclusive one-on-one with journalism, even though so which I do think would be a great bit if we just interviewed horses around. Which,
You
but
had all week on the backside to do it, Phil.
well, hey, our team from Kansas City came in, man. She was a rock star, by the way. Things Bethany was, she's got some things in the work where we had the possibility to do that with the lapel mic. But nonetheless,
Nice.
all in all, a great week out there at the track, and hopefully there is some more storylines heading in the Preakness. Although I'm with you, it just kind of
There's
not
not going to
capitalizing on
be.
it. Yeah, I
It's
know,
going to
I
just
know.
be dead. I mean, no one outside of the hardcore horse racing fans, which is incredibly niche, is going to care about the Preakness, and that's bad for the Triple Crown. That's bad for the city of Louisville, and that's not good for horse racing. So spread it out. Derby first Saturday in May, Preakness first Saturday in June, Belmont July 4th. Easy.
Yeah,
That's
it
all you got
didn't
to do.
help though too with Sovereignty was like running on the track this week too, so that's another storyline that's out there. But I know we'll get into the basketball
Yeah.
here in a bit. That's why people are listening. A reminder: Lloyd Street's Finest. It's a combined hybrid show today. Sunday morning hangover here on ESPN 680 1057, the ESPN Louisville app. He's Jack Grossman, Jack Grossman 97. If you want to follow him on Twitter, I'm Phil __ Baker on Twitter, the artist formerly known as Twitter, now X, for those that are scoring at home, if you want to interact with us on that way. Jackie boy, tons of things to get to in
Yes.
kind of an offseason. I know the last time we did this, it was one of those things that you were kind of alluding to. It's like, well, we'll sprinkle these in throughout the time and everything. I heard you on with Ennis earlier this week, and I really appreciated your stance on the news that came out. I'll let you set that up, but I may push back on some of those things.
Interesting. All right, I'm excited for this then because I am staunchly dug in on this, and of course,
Okay.
talking probably the biggest scheduling news of the week. A lot of this will probably be scheduling stuff between this and the ACC stuff, but Louisville, Kentucky, in the KFC Yum Center, November 11th. I don't 100% hate it, but I strongly dislike it. I do
Okay.
think, and this might be where you're coming from on this, there is the silver lining of you're not doing it up against the college football playoff, which Louisville, Kentucky's done in the past. You're not doing it up against the NFL, which U of L UK has been in the past. You're not doing it on a day where there's any major college or NFL football. That is good. That will allow ESPN to promote it a lot more than they've done in the past.
Agreed.
However, I just can't get past it being that early. I don't like it being that early. It feels almost like an exhibition game. And I'm a guy that loves early season tests, but the early season tests are litmus tests. So to where to figure out either are you as good as you think you are, or how far do you have to go? Like Louisville and Tennessee was the perfect example of that last year where Louisville got their asses kicked, but they got to recalibrate, go to the Bahamas, won a couple games, and obviously they had the injury issues and it kind of had to recalibrate again. But they use that as the first learning experience. Or you can go out and win a big game early on, like we could say Louisville beating, I think, Ohio State. They played really early in the year, 1 year or something like that. That with D'Angelo Russell. No, that was the ACC Big Ten Challenge. That was a little bit later.
Yeah.
But or like Louisville playing Minnesota
Yeah.
when Richard Pitino was there in the Caribbean, wherever the heck that game.
Was that on the boat? No, it was in the hangar. It was in the
Yeah, that was in the
airport
airplane hangar. Yeah, when Montrezl Harrell hit like
It's
six
Terry
threes.
Rozier,
Yep.
Chris Jones. God, why do I remember silly things like that? But okay, but continue. I want
But
you to get all
anyways,
the points out before I
yeah.
counter some of these things.
But looking at it, I don't like that. The point you play those big games is to prepare you for, yes, the ACC conference schedule, yes, March Madness, all those things, but also so that you're ready to play your biggest rival. You don't use the rivalry game as a tune-up. The rivalry game is the end goal, especially for both the fan bases. I get it. The coaches are thinking that, there's more to the season. Like, they understand the importance of the rivalry, especially Mark Pope, since he played in it. Pat Kelsey, I think, has fully embraced it as well. Well, but you got to be able to put that on a date that is later in the season to where your teams are more complete products. Because right now, Jaden Quaidens isn't going to play for Kentucky. Cason Pryor, we'll see how far he's back for Louisville. And Louisville will be trying to figure out the three guards and all that stuff. Neither of these teams are going to be as good as what they will be in January or February, or even December when they would normally play the game. That being said, there weren't really much of an option in the month of December. Just looking at it, just to quickly go through it. I know I did it on Ennis, so I'm just going to say it again. I mean, looking at the schedules, I mean, Louisville and Kentucky will both have ACC SEC challenge games the first week of December. So that is off the table. Louisville plays Indiana on December 6th. So that Saturday date's off the table. Kentucky plays Indiana on December 13th. That Saturday date's off the table. Louisville plays Tennessee on December 16th, so you can't do a midweek game that week. Kentucky's in the CBS Sports Classic on December 20th, so you can't do that Saturday. December 27th is 2 days after Christmas. Pitino and Cal once played a game on December 26th, but I don't know if Pope and PK want to do a similar thing. Plus, because the ACC 18-game schedule doesn't start, I believe, until 26, 27. They are playing 20 games this year, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, Phil. Louisville's going to have one or two ACC Conference League games mixed in there as well. So there's just absolutely no place to put these games in December. So I would have much rather them kicked it back to January or February. We can get to that in a minute, but I understand why they're doing it because they just filled up the schedule with other games and other dates, both in and out of conference. But I don't love it. That's not even bringing the aspect of it being, like 2.5 weeks before the football game, which just feels weird on top of it.
Right. Well, okay, so two things. The ACC 18-game schedule, that's starting this season.
Okay, that is starting this season. Okay.
So the primary rival in SMU and the Mustangs.
We're going to get to that. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just say this. We've done this for a while, and I feel like I've always kind of like seeped in with like media talk when you've just wanted to be like X's and O's of just that. And it's an illness I have. I acknowledge that. However, all valid points you bring up there. All valid points about the schedule, where it's in what the wait and see approach I'm going to have is how ESPN promotes this. And if they go kind of balls to the wall where they're like, I'm going to make this like, look, I mean, it's going to be tough to go the Carolina Duke route, but in iota, exactly. But in iota, I go back to the one where I think it was a midweek game.
It was Donovan Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox. I was just thinking, okay, 2016-17
Quinn Snyder game with he put Bam on skates.
Yeah,
that midweek game. They did a game day hit and like essentially in front of the KFC Yum Center. And it was the promo going into, I remember it vividly. Like they went all out for it. Again, that was Cal Pitino. It's a little different now in terms of that. Still national brands. Kentucky moves the needle nationally. I feel like Louisville does here too, but not maybe at the caliber of what Kentucky does on a national scale, but still moves it. there's a couple of different avenues for me. I know people don't like it. It's different. It feels weird. It feels peculiar. It's probably, I would equate it to this, and maybe it's not the best comparison because basketball is obviously the thing that it eats, sleeps, and breathes here. And I know football is trying to get into that. When they moved from the first game and then the third game, it felt awkward with the football Governor's Cup. And then it went to the final game and people didn't like it. But it was like, well, you're kind of getting treated as if like you're a big time rivalry now. That was kind of what was pitched of, the Iron Bowl, Ohio State and Michigan, Florida State, like all these things are going to be sprinkled in there until you saw the games on ESPN Classic, until you saw the games on SEC Network and ACC Network, and you felt like it was getting just swallowed up into the college football cycle. I think there's a couple avenues from a programming standpoint that you're conceding is maybe probably not the best word, but acknowledging kind of the writing on the wall, what we've been saying for a long time. We understand football is king, and you don't have to like it. And I know the Field of 68 guys, Doster and Goodman, put out like the viewership on YouTube, and the appetite for college basketball is there. And that's a different discussion on how ESPN approaches their products they have on there. But I think if you view it through the scope of they could possibly make this like a tip off to the season. And I know that's the Champions Classic, which comes a week later, but kind of leaning into the college football playoff rankings, which I would imagine, I know Dana Brown, the SID for Louisville, put these things out and said didn't have a designated time or TV destination. I would hope if they get booted off from action, I'm team you all the way on these things.
I don't think they'll get booted off from action,
but the fact that you have to pause for a second,
you never know.
That's so the wait and see if they go all out, and they kind of do it like they did it with that midweek game, Patino versus Cal, the De'Aaron Fox, Donovan Mitchell, and it's almost like a tip off to the season where it's like they put the promotion power behind the machine for that. Kind of, I mean, to be honest, like kind of the rival what the Champions Classic is. I'm okay with it from the standpoint, and then also the other scope of it that we haven't even talked about. What's Louisville's record against Kentucky overall? 17-40. Right. Switch it up. Switch it. I mean, like, obvious. I hate saying it, but like what you have been doing over the past has not been like switch it up a little bit. Now, the finished product component, and you're still trying to mold and fill out pieces of who and what players' roles are. Totally agree. Totally agree with that. But if you can get the spotlight behind the machine, that is ESPN for it. And look, it's a discussion of how TV dictates things, and I understand that doesn't sit well with a lot of people that don't cash their checks at the end of the month. I mean, I hate to be that blunt about it.
Here's the thing. I think
like you have this relationship with them, and it sucks. I get it. Like, but this is what happens when you get into bed with these TV partners is that there are some concessions that are made on these things. And I understand the average fan doesn't want to hear that, but you kind of like the coverage and the exposures that you get. You can't have it both ways.
I mean, here's the thing. And I'm the first to crush the TV people when it comes to how they handle college basketball and how, frankly, they've scheduled the Louisville Kentucky game in the past. But what choice was ESPN left with this, with how Louisville and Kentucky filled out the rest of their schedules? I mean, I went through and read where how filled, even without ACC games, how filled Louisville and UK schedules are already in December. And you can see the writing on the wall probably 2-3 weeks ago of, okay, where are they going to play this game? And I think part of it is I thought they nailed the time of the day game last year. Again, preferably we can get to this in a little bit. It should be in late January, February when people are more attuned into college basketball.
The Kansas Kentucky game for like the SEC Big 12 challenge.
Perfect.
Perfect. I completely agree with you on that.
And I want to get to that in a second. But if you're going to do it the first 2 months of the season, I agree. November's better than when they did it. I think the one that pissed me off more than anything else was the year that Kentucky went 30-0. Louisville was either undefeated or had one loss. It was a top 4 matchup in the Yum Center in 2015. But the game tipped off at noon on ESPN2 because of the Sugar Bowl going up against it. And I'm like, guys, that's not good for the rivalry. That's not good for the sport. That's not good for anyone to play that game there. So, yes, I think they'll get a similar treatment in terms of, or the other example is the Nick Richards game, the overtime classic in Lexington in 2020. No one watched that game until it was up against the college football playoff semis. Like, that's just idiotic.
That was CBS though that year because it was
CBS, but
right.
Still.
But still, no, you're right. I mean, it goes up that they have to
Yeah.
put something there. But no,
Yeah,
I
but
agree with you.
so I'm with you from the standpoint of it's better than being up against football. That is true. But the other thing that's hurt the rivalry is that not a lot of the games have been incredibly well played. A lot of that is because Patino tried to muck it up every year. But also, if you think about, I think one of the best played games of the rivalry was the Sweet 16 game that they played, which Louisville unfortunately choked. Let's be completely honest. They should have won that game. I wish they would have won that game, but they weren't able to close it out. But that was such a high level game. And it wasn't just because the teams were good, because they had numerous matchups where both teams were really, really good and really highly ranked. It was because it was the end of the season where both teams were playing their best. And you don't always get that. I thought last year's game was pretty high level in the middle of December, the way both teams were playing early in the year, which is pretty good. But when you play it that early, it's just such an unfinished product. And we see this with the Champions Classic a lot of times where it's like, okay, we see the talent, we see the potential, but the game was just, it was fine. And I don't want that for Louisville, Kentucky. I want it to be a really well played game. And I just think that becomes increasingly difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to get on November 11th.
From a Louisville, and this is a Louisville podcast, and
Yes.
obviously we're on ESPN Louisville too. Reminder, reset. He's Jack Grossman. I'm Phil Baker. It's a hybrid Field of 68, Floyd Street's finest, ESPN Louisville Sunday morning hangover show. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there too, if you're listening.
Happy Mother's
today.
Day, Mom.
But you know, I guess from the rivalry standpoint that you bring up, not being well played, obviously you're a Kentucky fan, you have the upper hand in the rivalry. Pat Kelsey has said over and over again, we got to do our part in this. I'm just kind of trying to be a glass half full individual and just kind of view it through a different prism. Switching it up, is it the worst thing though? Like from a Louisville side of things, like from what the record is, like I did the math with Strebel, like it was like such a defeated, like just to tie up the series. Do you know how old you'll be if you were able to tie up this? So what are they? They're down what, 23? If I'm doing the math about it.
So I'd be 50.
Let that marinate for a second. So like my thing is kind of like, hey, like why not switch it up a little bit and try to do it? Now, I agree with you with the scheduling component of you kind of got backed into a corner with some of these other games that are out there. However, it's a Rubik's Cube, man, because I think from the standpoint of you trying to, like, you want to give fans, and I think that was like the Josh Hurd discussion at the introductory press conference or some of the car wash interviews that Pat Kelsey had done, is that like we want, like he's like, hey, is the schedule too tough? Like the Tennessee series, I think, is the perfect example. Is like, hey, is this going to be too much? He's like, no, thank you. Like this is what was needed for us to grow. So you kind of want to dangle that carrot in front of some of the fans that like can
but that's the key word, that we need this to grow. You grow for the Kentucky game. The Kentucky game's not for the growing.
Right,
but this feels like the Kentucky game's for the growing.
Okay,
and that's not what the Louisville Kentucky game should be.
Look, I'm with you. It's weird. It feels odd. It's peculiar. It's not on the sports calendar that I'm used to. I fundamentally agree with you.
Let me ask this: if the football game was the first game of the year, would this feel as weird? Because I'm even someone like me, who I'll be completely honest, since I left the station a couple years ago, I'm pretty much removed from the football for U of L and UK. Like I kind of checked out, to be completely honest.
You don't really care about what big dogs doing at Ruby's?
No, not at all.
You don't care.
But even someone like that who really doesn't pay attention to it anymore, when I see the basketball game 2.5 weeks in front of the football game, that just feels weird.
No, I grant you all those arguments right there.
And one other thing, I think what hurts it also was the fact that last year, if you're going to play the game the first 2 months of the season, I thought they had the perfect time for it. They had it the Saturday after the conference championships in football and before the college football playoffs started. That was the perfect time to play that game if you're going to play.
Was that
December 14th?
No, you're right. Okay, so that was you're right on that. And then I guess the week prior, or
was
the year prior. Was the like midweek one, because I know Kellen and God, that's 2
Kellen
years.
and Strebel went, but
they just L's down.
But if like the game last year was up against the college football playoff in some way, shape, or form, they do this, it would probably be received a bit more positively. But the fact was that they finally found a date and said, okay, here's the Saturday, which has kind of become college basketball's marquee day. of the first 2 months of the season, other than the Champions Classic. I would argue even more than the Champions Classic, where you just have banger after banger after banger of games. And Louisville, Kentucky was right in the middle of it. 4 p.m. ESPN. You're watching Texas A&M Purdue, and they're promoting Louisville, Kentucky. You're watching. I think it was Arizona played. Damn, someone really good. Duke had a big game as well. It was a loaded slate, and everything was building up to Louisville and Kentucky. And that played out so well. The issue is, of course, this year Kentucky's playing Indiana on that date, so that's a little bit different.
Is that going to be an ESPN game, or is
that'll be an ESPN game because it's at Rupp this year?
Okay, so then and then the next year will be a Fox game, I would imagine. Because okay, so look, I mean, I grant you all your arguments there, and you make valid points on that. My standpoint is this: is like a couple things. It's twofold that you got to view it through the standpoint of ESPN is if they can get the machine behind it, and I think they have the capability to. I'm actually going to reach out to some people at ESPN PR.
You should
just kind of reach out to some of the decision making and some of the game plans that they have for that. Then, it's interesting to me because I think that when they put the full machine behind it, it can be a really good product leading up to it in terms of the game day guys on set. And maybe they kind of make it like, hey, the Champions Classics next week, promoting that, and it's maybe an infomercial for that. But this is kind of like the tip off to the season.
You know how I see this going? They're gonna, because it's a Tuesday night, so they're gonna have the college football playoff selection, or not selection, but rankings that night.
They're gonna lead into halftime on that.
No, they're not gonna lead into halftime. I bet they're going to have that at 7 o'clock, 7 to 8 o'clock, and then have Louisville, Kentucky at 8 o'clock. And have
Interesting.
The playoff be the lead into that, because it's usually at 7 o'clock. The only time it's not is when they do the Champions Classic, and they have enough time to do it between the two Champions Classic games.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You have the break between the two games. So that's what I think.
7 to 8 o'clock. That's not a terrible.
So I think that would be great for Louisville and Kentucky, because you're not going to get the college game day type thing, because they're not going to have a college basketball game day when they're doing the college football playoff selection shows about the football game day guys. I don't think that's going to be a thing. I bet you're going to get Shulman and Billis on the call, and that's good. But you always get Shulman and Billis on the call, so that's always good. That's the one thing they've consistently done, even when it was the Kenny Payne years. You had Billis and
Hazard
Shulman there, but I think you're going to get the college football playoff selections or rankings from 7 to 8, and they're going to just keep promoting the Louisville Kentucky game throughout that, which I think will work pretty well. That'll give you about as good of a lead as you can get for that. So I think that'll help a lot.
Well, and it's a crazy week too. I think Louisville plays Cal Saturday. They have the game that Tuesday, and then they have Clemson that Friday night. So I mean, just the game around that. I think like Kentucky plays like in football, like Tennessee Tech or something. I think
cupcake week.
Yeah, yes. Big dog. Yes. The big dog of the strength of schedule out there. But no, I'm curious in the wait and see approach of getting the machine behind it. You see the promos, obviously Duke, Carolina, you know what they're going to do with that. I'm not expecting it to be that. I want it to mimic what it was with the Cal and Patino machine and the promotion behind it. I'm going to reach out to some people, #journalism at ESPN PR, that we've established some things. I got to tell you some stuff off air that we're trying to do for.
You know how you could get the full machine behind it though, Phil?
Please,
you put it in late January and February. That's how you get the full machine behind it. And not just that, you get the full machine behind it on a Saturday when people are starting to watch college basketball.
Well, no, I agree with
when you play the game. When both teams are peaking, when the nation's starting to tune in. You know why Duke Carolina is considered the best rivalry in the sport? It's not because they play better games or that they're more competitive. It's because they play late in the year when people are caring, and ESPN gives enough of a bleep to actually promote the sport. You put Louisville and Kentucky in that spot. Yes, I get it. Duke Carolina's been a lot more competitive on that front. But if you play these games later in the year, that's how you get the full machine behind it on an annual basis. And you feels like you don't have to just push and beg people to watch. People are already starting to get innately interested. What are people going to be more interested in? As I slurred the word interested the first time.
I thought you were just buffering for a second on
we could say
strong
that.
internet connection on that.
Yeah, but I
got a question.
Yeah,
let me ask you, interject real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt on that, but okay, so with this new 18, and I know we want to spend more time on this, but going from 20 to 18 games, do you think that's the avenue to kind of get that Duke Illinois game outside of conference schedule there? But how much power does TV have on that. For now, granted, ACC and SEC, ESPN property, so that's not necessarily a big problem there. But no, I'm with you. Dieter says this all the time, that Sunday of inventory after the Super Bowl and NFL playoffs is you have so many people already brainwashed to go to that. Now, I know that's more of an NBC property or Fox, but like people are going to big games, not like the American. And I know
CBS and the Big Ten do a good job of that.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. But I think ESPN could do a better job. But I think that's
you mean Memphis and Tulsa on Sunday at 3:15 doesn't do it for you?
Well, I mean, seeing Penny on the sidelines and no one smoked anything,
but here's my thing. I think you can look at the big Sundays after football season ends. That's an option. I look at February 1st, which that was the day this year, the weekend between NFL Conference Championship Sunday and the Super Bowl. I think that's the time you kind of look at what ESPN's done.
The Pro Bowl weekend.
Yeah, Pro Bowl weekend. What ESPN's done the last probably decade. First with the SEC Big 12 Challenge, that's the weekend that always was. So you had Kentucky, Kansas, and all that stuff every year. And then the last couple of years since that went away, what do? That's when the first UNC Duke game is. That's when I remember they had a Saturday where they had Kansas State, Indiana, Purdue, Duke, UNC. It's a triple header. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now you can say, do you want a separate date because you don't want to be overshadowed by Duke UNC? Fine. I think, though, you look at that 4 p.m. game, the first Saturday in February or last Saturday in January, depending on how the NFL calendar falls that year, you're not going to get overshadowed to ACC Network or SEC Network with Louisville, Kentucky basketball like you do in football. You put it on ESPN's first marquee welcome to college basketball for the season day. That's a great spot for it. Or you push it back 2 weeks to the first weekend after the Super Bowl, whereas you say, as Diener loves to say, people are just starving for anything, and you make that your big mega event for Louisville and Kentucky to say, here's one of the marquee matchups in the game. People go to dialysis centers and beat each other up over this rivalry. You can play up the hate, play up all that stuff, and say, welcome to college basketball. Let's get going into March Madness. We're fully rolling here.
You'll love this. So this is Inside Baseball Bowl for ESPN Louisville, but you brought up the dialysis center. So Blanket Baker's been doing this thing called the Supper Club, and it's at James Beebe Distillery. Yeah, it's great. So they had the master distiller of the Freddie Dose, who was like big wigs at the bourbon component. And so obviously, Beam, big Kentucky guys there. So Blanket Baker and him are at this supper club talking bourbon and just like feuding over Louisville and Kentucky. And it's like, I was like, boy, it's like so how perfect. We've come up. Look, it's perfect that I know a lot of the audience probably doesn't know what we're talking about, but the dialysis center did that. I feel like, you know what? That's growth right there. Yes. To go for the dialysis fights and that. But anyways,
but let me say this. I think the one thing to kind of go back to your initial question, coaches for a long time have been very against playing those big games later in the season, but we've seen a little bit of shift. This is something Lieber and I are going to catch up, do another podcast early next week at some point, hopefully Monday or Tuesday, to where we can to where I'll ask him on this. I've talked to him about this before, and it's been a non-starter for him. Like he goes, you can't play that during the conference season and all that stuff. I'm like, why not? Football does it, but we've
Duke
seen
just did it too.
That's why Duke did it with Illinois, and John Shire wants to play those types of games late in the year every single year. Duke did with Illinois. Kentucky did with Gonzaga 2 years ago. You had the Big 12 SEC, even though that was more conference mandated thing for a while there. You had even back in the day, I remember Indiana and Louisville played a game in 2003 in the middle of February. It was either January or February, sometime during conference season. That's the important point. Louisville won that game 95-76. Reese Gaines and that crew. Yeah, that's like
the Grossman Bowl right there.
Yeah, that's a core memory of me growing up. That score in that game. But you can see a young Jack Grossman in my grandpa's seats behind the bench in that one in a Reese Gaines jersey. But I think the ACC moving to 18 games, plus with how bad the ACC's been the last couple of years. Now, I think the ACC is going to be better this next year, and I think it's more than just, what people have done the past couple of years where they just kind of say it because they're like, yeah, it can't be that bad again, and then it's that bad or even worse. I think we've seen a couple new hires bring some more talent in. Louisville's ascendance back into, being an actual basketball team helps a lot as well. For sure. Shire's got things rolling at Duke and all that stuff to where I think the league will be better than it was last year. I don't know how good it's going to be, but I feel like it's them saying, look, it's not just a guarantee. We're going to be a top 2 conference in in college hoops anymore. Let's cut some of the meat, which I don't know how you can do an 18 game league schedule with a 17 team league. That just is weird to
Right.
me. But I guess the theory is cut some of the meat to where Duke doesn't have to play Cal as often. Let's be honest. Or that Louisville, I would say SMU, but of course Louisville's playing SMU twice every year because why not? Ridiculous. But you can take those extra couple games and schedule a game, whether it be early in the season or later in the year as well, against an Illinois, against a Gonzaga, some of these really upper echelon teams to challenge yourself, get some more quad one wins, and give yourself a better chance.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. Now I'm curious too, and so we had Josh Hurt on, and he's supposed to be on. We had him on. Gosh, it's been a blur, Derby week, but he basically talked about the Louisville Kentucky game football, implying that he wanted it for that Sunday inventory. Of maybe Labor
Yeah,
Day,
Labor
so
Day
they could have
weekend.
this, so they have be the spotlight on there.
You know what? You know what's going to happen? They're going to move the game back there. Then the NFL will expand to 18 games to just take over Labor Day weekend.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, it's inevitable for it. But if you look at it, it's crazy because that's usually like when I do my fantasy football drafts, and you just kind of see the dead window more so on that Monday. And I know there's cookouts, but I feel like it was like Big Ten powerhouses, Rutgers and Northwestern. I feel like was like the a 3:30 game leading into like the big one that night. But I think like it's so cluttered. This is from the football standpoint on some of those Saturdays, like, dude, just spread them out. Even if it's not a great game, like if it can have that window, then more power to you. But I'm curious, you have multiple TVs behind you before we get back to the schedule. And I promise I'm going to bring it back with this. How do you consume your games? Is it off like a Roku? Do you have cable? Is it off like a Fire Stick?
Roku or YouTube TV.
Okay, so like let's say for Bellarmine for like the ESPN Plus games that are on there, and you see the plethora of other college basketball games on there. Do you have the access? Do you have to download the ESPN app in order to like watch those games, or do you just do it through your laptop?
I have the ESPN app on both the TVs, so I can do it through that. And I do have ESPN Plus on my laptop too. So where a lot of times, like especially when you get late in the year and you have those huge slates, I'll have a game on my main TV, a game on my second TV, a game on the laptop. It's kind of I can't. My TVs aren't big enough to do the multi view. And one YouTube TV figured out to where you can actually create the multi view every single time and do it with any game you want. That's what I need in my life. But also, just with the TVs I have, which they're fine size TVs.
Like what, a 40-incher over there?
Roughly 40 inches. Save that for the mixtape. But
they will.
Yeah, I know they will. But with that, I'm blind pretty much. Well, not actually blind, but like poor eyesight. That's how it goes. So the screens are too small for me in the multi view. To where I want one game on a TV, or just like my brother has a massive screen, so like he can do the multi view on that. That's fine.
Okay, so we need to start monetizing your channel. It just like crowdfunding like a 70-inch for a TV for Jack. So Jackie boy, so he's not squinting at it. I say that from the standpoint of this because you and I love it, and I promise this is going to go back to
Jack-Grossman-3 on Venmo.
I think you cut out and I stepped on it. Say that one more time if you want to.
Jack-Grossman-3 on Venmo.
and I have a terrible double underscore but that's Venmo dictating that. Nonetheless, so Feast Week, that was kind of like the kickoff tip off to the basketball season. In a perfect world, and we're not programmed that we're basketball guys, so who knows what they're doing in Bristol. I think it would behoove them, even if it's not on the ESPN like proper like channels for that, even if it's on ESPN Plus, driver, it's like, hey, we have a 24-hour coverage of Feast Week.
I thought you were going to say put Louisville, Kentucky at ESPN Plus, and I was
no. I'm not doing that. No, I'm not doing that. Yeah. Look, I'll be team ESPN on a lot of those things, and it sounds like I'm a company shill, which I'm not. But I disagree on a lot of things they do. I do a show with Nick Kern. Come on. But if they did that on ESPN Plus and then promoted it, hey, like every game that had that on there, it's like Feast Weeks on ESPN Plus, and it can be South Harmon Institute of Technology versus New Jersey Institute of Technology over there. And then that's going to be at 2:00 in the morning. Next week, coming up, Louisville, Kentucky. Then Champions Classic, and it's almost like a timeline of like all their college basketball elements. I think like that's the machine behind it. Now, to fast forward to what you were talking about with the 18 to 20 game schedule or 20 to 18 game schedule, people, I understand the reluctance in that people not being a fan of the SMU thing. I'm not a fan of that either. But if you could schedule, and this is where I'm going to be curious to see what Josh Hurd is able to do in the basketball team. If they could say, okay, well, we'll play, obviously, what you saw the non-conference schedule this time, we'll play anytime, anywhere. We can play in these weeks and those windows post Super Bowl to break up some of the conference tournaments when you only have one game a week and you have that kind of rest, recoup, and you could pull a Duke, Illinois. I think a TV property would be open to like picking that up. But I guess my question is, if you do, how did Duke go about it? Because obviously an ESPN property, that game was on Fox.
Well, they were playing Illinois.
Well, I know, but
so that kind of threw it out the window.
So,
I think that's the difference is though.
But
Illinois,
how did they pull
Big
that
Ten.
off? Do you go to ESPN and do you have to ask their permission, or can you operate in your own space?
I think when it's a neutral site game, you can operate in your own space because
Interesting.
from the same and don't take this as any hard fact reporting. This is just me going off of other things. Just because, like the CBS Sports Classic, for instance, Kentucky doesn't have any deal with CBS. The SEC don't have any deal with CBS.
Michigan State in the Champions Classic too. Yeah, you're right.
So I think you see some of these neutral site games, they have more flexibility than that. I remember Kentucky played a neutral site game against Seton Hall a few years ago in MSG. And I guess in that one you could have claimed technically that Seton Hall was the home team or whatever, but they did brand it as a neutral site game. Kentucky was wearing the home jerseys. And that game was on Fox.
Yeah,
So,
I would be fascinated to see the minutia behind that.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but just based off of the examples throughout the years, I mean, Indiana, for instance, played who was it on ESPN? They played Kansas on ESPN a couple years ago.
And they're Fox properties. Yeah, no, I know that. Yeah, okay. I'm just curious. It's something I'm going to dig a little bit more into.
When the game is on campus or you're the designated home team, it filters through that. So like when Indiana plays Kentucky at Lucas Oil next season, my assumption is that game will be on a Fox or a Fox property because Indiana's the designated home team. But when it's a true neutral site game, I think they can just decide what the heck they want. So I think that's how Duke Illinois ends up on Fox. That's how it goes. But I think the difference
is that a longer series too, or is that just a one-off?
I think it was a one-off. Okay. But I think the difference would be because Illinois, Big Ten, Duke, ACC, both those leagues have different TV partners. The ACC and the SEC are both firmly in bed with ESPN. So there's just no way I could ever see a Louisville, Kentucky game, especially with it being on the home courts, being on anything other than ESPN, unless those TV contracts change.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. So, but I'm just curious to see now with, Josh Hurd being so open and transparent about what he wants to do with football, if they're doing that now that they know it's an 18-game schedule, looking at building out their schedule, if there's other teams that.
Yeah, I think Louisville and Indiana, I think in Indianapolis, I'd probably expect that one to be on a Fox property, I would think.
Yeah, I would too. And then probably if it's because that's only a one-off for now with the hopes of building.
I want that to be more than a one-off. I want those games to be on campus. I'm happy they're finally playing each other in, not New York or the Bahamas with those two fan bases. Put it in a place where they can travel, please.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. So I know a lot of people had a lot of thoughts about the SMU being the primary rival with that. And here's the only thing. I hate it. I mean, I don't have to like it either, simply with the TV, but I understand where the conference is working from. Like you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where I wish that it was Notre Dame. I wish that it was Pittsburgh that has some history with Louisville, but the other fits that outside of like the Notre Dame Boston College.
That's the one. I mean, that's
the one where I'm like, okay, but I guess it's like you don't want to have them as Cal and Stanford, and like it or not, you're still kind of the new kid on the block, a decade in plus in the ACC, and I think it's just as simple as that. And I hate that. It's stupid. It's egregious, but I think that's how they're operating.
To that thing, the new kid on the block thing. I mean. Cal, Stanford, SMU are all newer than you now, and Notre Dame, Pitt,
well, yeah,
and
but Cal and Stanford are against each other.
But Pitt, Syracuse, and Notre Dame are all just a year apart from you, so you're one of a group in that. So like it's not like Louisville's just being singled out, saying you're the new guy. No, there's like 7 new teams still comparatively, and 3 that are newer than you. So I don't think it's that type of thing. I think it comes down to like Pitt, Syracuse. That makes more sense than Louisville. It just does. It's the one is Notre Dame, Boston College means absolutely nothing, and they should have just. It's a lot easier to say the Louisville side of things.
You're doing the Catholic school thing. That's all you're doing there.
Yeah, exactly. And instead, Louisville and Notre Dame have, especially in the Big East years, a great history of playing each other in basketball. All the overtime games, all the wackiness that happens when those two teams have played historically. And Boston College is just a doormat. Why are we catering to Boston
I
College,
agree.
guys?
I agree with
Like,
you on all those things. It just feels like that's what I
yeah,
feel like they're operating in that space just because even if it's a year out, it's lazy. I'm 100% with you. I wish it were Notre Dame just for everything you just listed off, but it feels like they're doing it because it's like, okay, if you wanted to do like a city school, Miami, well, you can't do Miami because of Florida State. Oh, if you want to do a city school with Georgia Tech, well, proximity, you got to do it with the
I
ACC
personally would have
Clemson.
loved it if it was Georgia Tech.
Well, of course you would. Yes.
Yeah,
Actually, you were the bad luck charm though. Last
yeah,
time
I
you went down
was.
there, the entire city goes down there. They freaking lose, and it was held against them forever.
Yep, it was. But I was not in Lexington for the first round game though, so
Can't
maybe
blame
it's
you.
over. But that would have been fun until the game tipped off. But I honestly think it just came down to Louisville's closer to SMU than Notre Dame and Boston College, which is
I
a
think you're
lazy way to
right.
do it.
It's
But
it's terrible.
because
And I
Louisville
agree with
is
you.
nowhere close to Dallas. But
But they have direct flights. Muhammad Ali International Airport. Hey,
yeah,
no,
yeah. Also, while we're on the topic, bleep off Southwest for banning the direct flight from Atlanta to Louisville.
oh, they did. I didn't
They
know
don't have it
this.
anymore.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
Wow. So
I know.
you got to do Delta or American.
Yeah,
Oh, American.
I'm gonna be back up in a few weeks. I'm doing the Indy 500, so that's gonna be fun. But
Gonna link up with Patty Ice up there.
yeah. We'll have to see. I'm going with my uncle because he has tickets every year. They got loaded up on the totem pole to where my brother and I are going. But
Nice.
so I'm hyped. It's gonna be awesome. It's like the third time I've gone with them, so it's always a blast. Hey, you talk about Phil Gonzalez, be right on that finish line. It's gonna be great. But
Attaboy. I've been offered to go multiple times, and
it's
I've
fun.
turned it down. I need to go once. I owe it to
It's
myself
a
to at least go
lot
one
of
time.
fun. It's a lot of
I had a
fun.
great time whenever we had the NASCAR races up in Sparta. So I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like
But
this.
anyway,
And I had a blast.
it's cost me like $400 to fly Delta through Louisville because I'm not flying through Indy because that's
Um,
insanity. But
yeah, they
yeah,
know. They know. That's crazy. I know we're adding all these new flights. I didn't know we lost that one. That's concerning for some trips I have coming up. Make sure you have your real ID. That's a whole new thing. I
yeah,
got
I got it. I got that taken care of.
Okay.
They've been promoting
Yeah.
that one for years, man.
I know. That's again, it's on me. It's been on years, but yours truly, as usual, waits to the last
Of
minute. So,
course.
put a bow on just kind of initial takeaways. Look, I know we're inching closer to the top of the hour here locally in ESPN Louisville. He's Jack Grossman, Floyd Street's finest, Field of 68. Bill Baker here. Right here on the Sunday morning hangover, ESPN 680, 105.7, the ESPN Louisville app, a little hybrid show today. Happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. But to put a bow on everything, you're not a fan of it. You've kind of come off a little bit. If I don't want to speak for you, but hearing you on with Ennis earlier this week, it feels as if like you're not as spitting as much venom as you were when you initially heard it. You still don't like it, but
No, I'm still angry about it.
yeah, no, but you kind of came down a little bit in some of the cadence. I feel like when I heard you on with Ennis the other day.
Well, it was also just fresh with Ennis.
Yeah,
Dude, so I mean, time does that.
no, I'm with you
Yep.
on that. Real quick, a couple other nuggets we didn't get to. James Scott, that coming out is
Yep.
committed to Old Miss, joining Travis Perry and Corey Johnson down there for that.
Dre
What do you
Davis
make-
recruiting just all the local guys.
Yeah, no
Yep.
kidding on that. What did you make of that story? Fit in terms of where that landing spot, and how do you think Chris Beard is going to use him down there?
I think it's gonna be a good fit down there for him. I'm still disappointed that he ended up leaving Louisville because I thought he and Khalifa were going to be a really good tandem together. We'll kind of see what happens now on the Louisville side of things. It kind of felt like once Pryor decided he was coming back, it's like, okay, I'm leaving now. It's kind of how that seemed to play out, just from the outside looking at it. But I mean, Chris Beard, he defends, man. They teach him how to defend. He loves athleticism. He loves length. And James Scott, I think, is going to be a really good fit for what they like to do, especially on the defensive end. Expect him. He was a good shot blocker for Louisville last year. I'd expect him to take another step forward on that front as well. And we'll see if he can continue developing his game on the offensive end because, elite rim threat. We all know that. Really good, that durable handoff, zoom action. Chris Beard's not going to run as much of that, but I think expect him to be that dunker spot, clean up a lot of messes on the offensive end.
I was shocked. I know this is a Louisville podcast, but I was shocked Travis Perry ended up there too. Like I thought that was
Yeah,
going
he's
to be
just gonna
kind
be
of
buried
a
on the bench there too.
yeah. Okay. So I
Like,
mean that's where a lot of people thought kind of about the text slide here in Louisville. Also, real quick, and it was something that we talked about. Got to get you up here. We're talking about Derby and everything happening around. There's this great event the week before Derby in this place like in the heart of Louisville called Progress Park, and it's called Burby. Dude, you'd love it. Like it's incredible. I'll send you pictures of it off air, but we like did a bunch of shows out there. So when the news came out about James Scott transfer, I'm glad you kind of said some of those things about the tangent with Ali Khalifa because it's kind of the narrative here for a lot of people on it when the news came out was like, well, there was going to be no playing time for him. He was going to get lost in the bench. We're better, like not a ton, but some, because Lieberman was on there with it, and he said he did some great things, and we did the V show with Nick the other day, and it was like, not Lieberman, but others were coming in. It's like, hey, like he was good, but he was great. I'm like, dude, he was like top of the country. Like
I think
it Ducks.
what turned Louisville season around and springboarded them was the moment that Pat Kelsey could trust James Scott to play 25, 30 minutes a game. That's when Louisville season took off.
Yeah,
to me.
Look, Cason Pryor had some bright moments before the injury. Obviously, Ali Khalifa coming off the injury on that Javon Hadley. I'm really excited to see what he's able to do for that. But I will say this, like the one thing that I've got to be consistent about for those, and there's not many. I don't want to make put everybody in a bucket and say this is what the entire fan base is thinking. But the better off component without him, I'm a little reluctant to say that because it's like, guys, like you can't have Pat Kelsey, and look, he's consistent on these things.
He's going to play 11, 12 guys.
Yeah, exactly. And the not just that, but the culture component that he said that James Scott brought from that. I know Kobe Rogers is still on the team for that, but Rain Smith's gone, and really building off that. And for it to come down to the last minute of when the transfer portal was closing, or when you could enter your name in there, showed me that he was really struggling with the decision, and I'm sure that was a difficult conversation to have with Pat Kelsey. But this whole notion of they're better off without, I'm a little hesitant to like go that far.
I think the Fruit Kid's the X factor.
Right, and we just never seen him play like other than highlights out there.
Yeah, I mean,
you got a highlight tape out there from the Jewish Community Center. Like you look great, you're trading threes, but we just don't know what's out there. He looks the part, but I've also been told Mike Barr is the best 3-point shooter of all time, and we know how that's gone out. So yeah, shout out to Mike Barr. That's our guy.
Oh, good old Mike Mara. What a guy. But yeah, I mean, if Fruit comes in, he's really, really good, then yeah, you can probably live without James Scott. But if he comes in and he struggles to adapt to American basketball, struggles with physicality of college basketball, then yeah, to have a dude that's an elite rim finisher, doesn't need the ball in his hands, but can initiate some offense, is a good shot blocker and rebounder as well, super athletic. You want that type of guy on the roster, guys. It's okay to say that. Like,
and it's just the new day and age. And I said this, it's like recalibrating our minds of like, hey, this is the transfer portal. Pat Kelsey said as much at the Derby Festival luncheon. It's like, it's a different day in college basketball. He's like, he loves the kid. He had only good things to say about him. But yeah, I think it's just, you don't want to be like a sore loser in it as well. And I think some out there, not many, but some were out there doing
I mean,
that.
like that's what fans do though. I mean, you lose a recruit. We didn't want him anyways.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Type of deal.
Ask Nate Mint and Mitchell Hannigan and that Fanskate stuff that was going on out there. Real quick before we finish this up, he's Jack Grossman 97 on Twitter /X. I'm Phil __ Baker. He's with Floyd Street's Finest, Field of 68, ESPN Louisville over here. Now we're gonna get inside baseball, so we may lose some of the pod here, but here locally we'll love it.
Yeah, we're at the end of it anyway.
Yeah, right. Have you followed?
Make sure everyone is sticking around at this point.
Right, I know. Have you followed the pickleball stuff that's going on in Louisville?
No, I know my mom plays it like 6 times a week, but
ask your mom about the Joe Creason Park pickleball stuff. So Nick and I were talking about this on the V show the other day, and Marcus Green of WDRB texted us. It was like, hey, I'll come on to talk about it. It's not Top Golf 2.0. But
I think I saw Blakey Baker tweeting about this.
Oh yeah,
actually.
so Blake is opinionated. I have friends that live near it, and it's nice to see multiple perspectives.
Well, let me take. Is this they're gonna build a pickleball center and people don't want it because of traffic?
Well, a couple things.
They're ridiculous.
Well, there's already pickleball and tennis courts there. There's more to the story than that.
Okay.
Marcus Green of WDRB did a great job breaking it down. I encourage you to head over to WDRB if you want to read more about it. They have this like great interactive map that I was like in a trance. I was like a cat with like a laser pointer on a wall that like you see on TikTok or something. And I'm like, man. So like we're interviewing the guy and I was just in a trance for that. Anyways, so this is the most Louisville thing ever. But basically it's a lot of the heavy hitters businesses locally that want to have this done. And the interactive map does a good job of like how much they would encroach in on the park because a lot of people over the Joe Creason's a beautiful park, great sledding place too if you want to go there as a kid. And the zoo traffic is a thing. I will grant them their argument on that. As somebody who takes their kids to the zoo on Saturday, it can get backed up off Poplar level.
I honestly
However,
didn't know. I haven't been to the zoo in about 20
no,
years.
trust me, I'm like a mall walker now. When you get kids, you was like, let's get out of the house. I just wish they opened earlier because I'm up so early. But it's funny because they're gonna build like they're getting depleted, like the tennis courts that are over there. So it's essentially like going over what's already there in some capacity.
So
Now,
what's the difference?
well, but the deal, Marcus Green said, they feel like a lot of the neighborhood feels like it was kind of operated in the shadows. So there's a bunch of hearings around there. So I knew you'd enjoy that as somebody. We used to vent so much about the Top Golf stuff. He encouraged me. It's not. He equated it to if you're on a football field, we're on our own 10 right now in terms of the process that they are right now. But you need to read up on it. It's something that is near and dear.
You
to
know
your
why
heart.
Louisville doesn't have an NBA team?
Don't.
It takes 6 years to build a freaking Top Golf. I mean, come on.
There's people that are very opinionated.
Look. I love the city of Louisville. It's great. Derby, incredible, all that stuff. But guys, if you want to be a big city, you can't whine and complain and stop progress when it's trying to be made.
Yeah, look, read up on it. It's interesting. Like there's some things that are happening and there's going to be some more hearings about it. But I love that a serious news reporter, Marcus Green, who I actually really like, I got to meet about at the track. I think the same day I saw you and my buddy Sam drop that was out there from WDRB. And then he just texted us is like, hey, like, cause I admittedly was like, I don't know, like, either side of this. Like I'm seeing Blake obviously is opinionated about this. I'm seeing others that are like, they're going to do this. It's going to be like the movie Fern Gully out there and they're going to tear down all the trees. You probably don't understand that reference.
No,
but
I don't.
yeah, Robin Williams, I think was the voice of that.
Oh,
But
okay.
they just take down the trees. But I do as a Louisville centric podcast, I'll send you a link. You would enjoy it.
Just come on, guys.
What a
Be better.
Oh, that's a perfect place to stop. He's Jack Grossman. I'm Phil Baker, Floyd Street's finest, Field of 68 Podcast Network. Appreciate you, Jackie Grossman. We'll continue along here on ESPN Louisville. Nick Kern probably going to join us coming up here in a bit. On a Mother's Day edition, head out to Bats Baseball. He's down at the ballpark on that front. Jackie boy, as always, appreciate it, my friend.
Always, yeah, like, subscribe, do all that stuff I always forget to say. Floyd Treats Fine. It's part of the Field 68 Podcast Network. Again, like Coach Lieberman and I should be back sometime next week. We'll probably keep reacting to this, get his thoughts on the Louisville Kentucky game, all that stuff as well. Phil, always appreciate the time, my man. Take care. We'll catch up soon.
You as well, my friend. Be sure to ask Lieberman about the pickleball stuff. He's
I'm sure he's a big pickleball guy. Yep.
All right, buddy. Tell your Bob happy Mother's Day. We'll talk to you soon, friend.
All right. Talk to you soon. More